All right, we are looking at a segment of the Austerlitz battlefield. I arrived at the expo a little bit late in the morning of the 30th, and so I didn't have a chance to see all the goings-ons that had taken place earlier. This is looking at the battlefield in the south of the battlefield and towards the center at probably about 11 o'clock in the morning um, of the day or in battle time, I should say. A couple of things that are going on here. One is that part of the victory conditions were for the Austrians to capture or occupy at some point some of the towns here in the south of the battlefield. And they get victory points for getting units there and driving the initial small French forces out. Um, we are looking at this time the French have moved in. This is Marshal Davout's division and some heavy cavalry that have come in, and they're pushing the Russians back in this area, and the Russians are along here. And the Russians are pulling back, still holding on to some units here in the pheasantry to try to slow down the French a little bit. And this is kind of how things are developing at the very southern extremity of the battlefield. Now, if we move over a little bit, we are going to see here towards the center some of the things that are going on here. The Russians, after occupying some of the southern villages, then pushed a lot of their forces to try to take some of these villages here and see if they could get some additional victory points for that. The French were able to hold them off, and in this particular case, we have Marshal Soul's corps along here, and it's his units that were able to hold the line. Took a fair amount of abuse from the Russians, but were able to prevent them from gaining the victory points for those two little villages. And right now, they're kind of reestablishing things a little bit along that section of the line. Now over here, we have Marshal Bernado's corps along here, putting some pressure on the Russians along this line in order to take a little bit of pressure off Soul's corps as they reorganize from having been roughed up rather a bit in the first part of the morning. And that's kind of how things stand with the French and Russians in the center around the 11 o'clock hour.